Hi everyone, this is Rob over at Kudzu. Honestly, I think this is the first video I've done with PowerPoint, and if you follow along, you'll probably see why. So I wanted to kind of set this up a little bit because a lot of this is kind of underneath the covers and difficult to visualize. So really, we have something we coined uniform. One form, a single form way, a single way to represent a form. So you have all these different forms in your organization, and you might like some of them where they're at. There may be others that you want to get, uplift them to a new platform or make them more accessible, or just improve them or process enable them. So we started out with the idea that we needed some way to verbosely describe pretty much any form you might have, in your organization, and then leverage that so we could transform those forms from, a source to a different target, and along with that, also, be able to migrate the data. So if you kind of just see some of the examples here, you might start with an InfoPath form and want to convert it to a Power App or surface it inside of SharePoint via our runtime. So we have a SharePoint native wrapper that hosts our uniform runtime. You might have like either a scanned image that somebody saved as a PDF, or it was just somebody just drew a form in one of the lesser Adobe PDF tools. It's not tagged, it's not an acro form, it's not XFA based. It's basically a non-fillable form that somebody has to print out, fill out, scan, take a picture with their phone, and send it back to you. You might want to take those and convert them to a fillable PDF, and maybe along the way make them WCAG Section 508 HHS compliant. You might be working with Balsamiq or Figma or some other mock-up wireframing tool, and you're a K2 smart form shop. And really, if you kind of look at our list of connectors, any combination of a reader on the left and a writer on the right, from a conversion and transformation perspective. Just to visualize that a little bit, just kind of the before and after. So on the left, we have a InfoPath form we created, medium complexity, several repeating sections. I've got some populated drop downs, and essentially what we do during this process is the readers kind of crack open whatever the source document is and extract the layout and styling of the form. Look at all the controls and labeling elements in that form. Extract any schema information. So anybody that's worked with InfoPath knows that you define a schema. So in the case of InfoPath, we flatten that schema quite a bit because it could be deeply nested. Any rules that we find, so in the cases of like InfoPath or an acro form or XFA based PDF, there are typically rules embedded in those forms. We can extract those. We can extract images, and then ultimately, if the reader supports it and the source supports it, we can extract data and move it to whatever the target is. On the right-hand side, you'll see, a representation of that same form inside of our runtime. HTML-based, web fillable, pretty much can surface this runtime anywhere. But on the right side, that could also be a K2 smart form. It could be a Power App, and there's tons of videos, well, not tons, but maybe a dozen or so videos out on our website and across YouTube and other places that show these different sources and destinations. And just as a high level to kind of visualize the stack here. So, again, at the core of this thing is uniform. The way we describe these forms. On top of that, we've built a services layer that does additional recognition. So if a reader let's think of a static PDF. It's just lines and well, it might not be line, it might just be an image, in which case we have to enlist help from our image reader. But let's just say it's just lines and shapes and text. The PDF reader by itself isn't going to say, oh, this is an input, this is a label. It's going to basically catalog all those shapes, all that text, pass it off to our recognition engine that then says, oh, I'll do the heavy lifting here and figure out what's inputs and what's not. If that was a InfoPath form, InfoPath's very descriptive. We know how InfoPath identifies different controls. We know how it identifies labels and things of that nature. So we can do most, if not all, of that heavy lifting in the reader and not require much work from the recognition services layer. And there's all types of transformations that happen in there. We do, cleanup on fields. We set accessibility metadata. So we'll take typically things that aren't very descriptive and make them more descriptive. If it's title case, we'll make it sentence case, things like that. So something that a screen reader, if you're using one, will be able to provide a more descriptive experience. And then storage of the form, storage of the model, storage of any images, and things of that nature. On top of that, we have our connector framework, which is highly extensible. We support a range of readers and writers at this point and have a 3-year roadmap for what we're going to build out there. Some of that's on our website. Some of it can be discussed under NDA. And then we have an experiences layer, so that's the forms management that you'll see throughout our various demos. There's an editor. You'll also see that in some of our demonstrations. And then, of course, our runtime. So at the end of the day, you can take a form you've read in and expose it, via our runtime. And then on top of that, we've built a embedded and linking framework, for lack of a better term, which includes our publishing engine, which allows us to take that runtime and say, okay, I want to publish it here, I want to publish it there, I want to publish it as an embedded experience, which renders the form a little bit differently than if it's going to be a deep linked experience via some kind of internal or external form library. So with that, I will wrap up the PowerPoint portion of this presentation. So here we are in the forms management piece. Let's just kind of run through an end-to-end demo and kind of call out the the uniform highlights along the way. So this again, this is the connector framework. It sits on top of uniform. We can pick any one of the readers that we have, or you can just pick a file and it'll determine which reader it needs to use. We'll go ahead and click next here. This is that employment application InfoPath form that we showed in the slides. It takes a couple seconds to read it in and transform it into that uniform model. You can kind of go through here and look at the different information that it gathers. This is again uniform representation of the form in our runtime. It's read only. It's essentially a preview. I can also go into the editor, and this is where it takes it and really gives you the kind of full set of capabilities. So I can click around here, change the appearance of these fields. I can change the field names themselves. Maybe I don't like this full name. I can change it to something else. One of the things that we see people do a lot is kind of change, any place where they have something that could either be a drop down or a picker. They go in and change those. So I'm going to change this position applied for to a picker, which then allows me to associate it with a data source. And I'm going to go ahead and associate this with a term store in my people term group, and I'm going to use job title. So then when somebody starts keying in a position applied for, it'll pick from that. It'll give them a list to pick from in that particular term store. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. Click close. We'll go next here. I'll pick SharePoint. We'll write this out to SharePoint. I'll pick which metadata I want to promote, similar to the way InfoPath works. I'll go into my SharePoint settings. We'll just go root form name. We'll overwrite it just in case it's there already. It probably is. You know, and there's things you can do with, you know, importing data. If we had data, you can inject, you know, custom CSS and JavaScript if you wanted to do something different than what the form that our runtime does natively. So this is going to create the list if it doesn't exist, overwrite it if it does, and then package up our runtime and publish it to that site, and wire everything up. So when you click new on that list, it'll bring up a new instance of the form. If you edit or view an existing one, it'll bring up that view of the form. So here we are with our list with the metadata that's been promoted. Click new. This brings up our SharePoint native wrapper that hosts our runtime inside of a Shadow DOM. I'm not going to get into Shadow DOMs in this conversation. We'll have other videos that cover different embedding and deep linking techniques that you can use with our publishing framework. But let's go ahead and fill this out. I'm just going to put Rob. I'm in Michigan. Put in my phone number and my email address. And I want it to be the chief technology officer. And I want them to pay me $100,000. Hit save. And there you can see all the data that I filled in. But oopsie, I made a mistake. I want to go back in. And I really want them to pay me $1 million. Save that. And you can see, so it works, acts, feels very similar to a SharePoint native experience, but we very quickly took an old InfoPath form, soon, you know, in a few years, not to be supported InfoPath form, and was able to convert that with a few clicks, very high fidelity, to a SharePoint embedded experience. That could also be a Power App. It could be a K2 Smart Form. All are viable, you know, destinations for forms like this. So there you have it. A brief explanation of what Uniform is. Some really lousy PowerPoint slides. Kind of a quick end-to-end demo highlighting, you know, the power of Uniform. Hope you enjoyed it. Hit us up if you have questions, want more information. There's a lot of information on our website, a lot of information we share in the different videos on our YouTube channel. Thank you very much. Enjoy.